All right, so the agenda tonight, after we get through some welcomes here, Steve Wexler from Data Revelations is going to be joining us. I'll introduce him in a second. Ethan Hahn from Unifund is going to cover dual access. Hello, Craig. And then I'm going to show some features in 2018.3. So if you're not familiar, how many people first time been to the Tug? Craig, you've been here before. So for those online, about half the room raised their hand. These are the Tug admins. We have Matt, who couldn't be with us tonight. His business trip got extended and he's out of town. Alex, I don't see Alex. I don't see Rico. Bruce Henry is right here. Raise your hand, Bruce. There's Bruce, myself, and Craig Wortman, who's somewhere in the back there. Yeah, he just walked in the back. If you have any questions relating, feel free to reach out to us. We're all online. We're all on Twitter. We're all on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about the group itself, my Gmail down there and Craig's, this is also available online on our new webpage, which the old webpage is still up, cincytug.com. That is still hosted and points to a forum page that is still there. We have a new splash page that Tableau has all of the user groups moving toward, and that's the new platform. So you'll see notifications on the new platform. That's the new registration instead of Eventbrite. You'll see all of our emails coming out of that system now, and it has all of the past and future events all recorded in there. So that is the website for that. We will have to decide as a group if we want to point Cincy Tug to that page or not. We probably will, because that's where all the content is supposed to be. So anyway, that page is live and you all are here as a result of that. So I'm sure you've seen that page. You can subscribe for updates on that. The important part about this change is that we can now have your email and send emails to you, where before Tableau did all that and we were kind of out of the picture. So we have more control over that. We can send out notifications. We can have events with lots of people and wait lists and all of that fun stuff. And all of the past events and upcoming events will be listed on here as we publish them. So that's our new homepage. There's our email. We'll make sure that we put this PowerPoint deck on that page as well, so you have access to all of that. If you have any questions or concerns, send out an email to us. If you're not getting emails, let us know. It should work seamlessly now under the new platform. You can still put forum posts on the old page. If you have Tableau questions, it's just like the Tableau forums, so you can still put your questions there. If you have feedback, let us know. We're going to be getting together soon and planning 2019. I think we were targeting 6 events per year at least, so every other month. Upcoming events, the UC Center for Business Analytics is, I don't think they've ever had this many events in a short period of time. So this will give you an idea of all the things that are going on. Most of them are in this very room that we're sitting in. So coming up next is Data Science with Python. I'm doing the Tableau training on December 6th and 7th. That'll be sort of the standard Tableau training that we've done here. There's Introduction to R, a new data management class, which is with SQL. Then they're going to do Intermediate R and Advanced R. And then in 2019, we're splitting up Tableau into 2 sections. I'm going to do an Introduction to Tableau for beginner and then do an Intermediate Advanced section for people that have already had the Tableau class. They're also starting Power BI classes. They've had one already. They're doing another one. All of those April dates are at their Analytics Summit. So that's down at the bottom here, April 1st to the 3rd at the Sharonville Convention Center. And they'll have all of those training programs as part of that. My co-author and presenter tonight, Steve Wexler, he and I are doing a new webinar called Chart Chat. That's on Tuesday, November 27th. That's free online. So feel free to join that. We're going to try to do that periodically, starting it out this year, but continue that through 2019. The Cincinnati 9 users group is the same day in the evening. I think that's in this very room as well. That's sentiment analysis, deep learning, machine learning. So that if you're into that, that's sort of a user group for the Cincinnati 9 users. And look for our Q1 tug meeting. We don't have a date on that yet. We'll get back to you on when that will be. What are we targeting, Craig? February, March? February, March, he says. Okay, so we have 3 speakers, I guess, tonight. Our headliner is Mr. Steve Wexler. I've known Steve for many, many years. I've collaborated with him on a number of projects. Most recently, the Big Book of Dashboards. He's one of the co-authors with me on the Big Book of Dashboards. He is a consultant and founded and owns Data Revelations, which I'm sure he'll talk about. Iron Viz champion, the first Iron Viz champion, I believe. Tableau Zen master and author, as I mentioned. After that, Ethan is going to come up and he's going to talk about dual access, all the fun things we can do in Tableau with dual access, various charts and things. Ethan is the IT manager of R&D and analytics for Unifund, works for me, and he's also staff sergeant in the U.S. Army Reserves. And finally, I will show and demo some things on Tableau 2018.3, which is just a couple weeks old and has lots and lots of cool features, new features, very powerful features, and I'll try to give you a taste and demonstration of some of those. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And hello, Steve.
Hey, Jeff, and hey, everybody else. I'm just looking at the chat window, and hopefully, Julie, you have indicated that you weren't seeing anything beyond the first slide. Hopefully, that's been remedied. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if we can get this working. And let me just maneuver a couple of things as we're trying out a new platform here. So, Jeff and members of the Cincinnati Tug, thank you very much for having me speak today. And it's my hope that you will find this useful. So I'm going to talk about art versus infographic versus business dashboard, because I'm seeing people making all sorts of amazing things out there. And I'm questioning, as I'm sure you are, should I be making something that looks like that, or is that for a different audience at a different time? Jeff gave me an introduction. I am the founder and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's first Iron Viz champion. That was back in 1957. You probably didn't hear it at the time. It was the same week as Sputnik. By the way, there's probably someone there who thinks, wow, does it go back that far? It was actually 2011 was the... I'm a 5-time Tableau Zen master, and Jeff has heard me joke about this, but I think everyone at this meeting probably knows that a Tableau Zen master is an actual thing, and it's a pretty high honor, and I'm very proud of the achievement. If you're not in Tableau or you're new to Tableau, and you may not know that's really a thing, and someone hands you a card that says Tableau Zen master on it, and they look at the card and go, God, this guy must be a complete tool. What guy puts Tableau Zen Master on his own card? It's a real thing. And I'm certainly proud of that. But the thing I'm most proud of in terms of data visualization is being one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards. In addition to running the book with Jeff and with Andy Cotgreave, we've also do workshops. And at the beginning of every workshop and ending of every workshop, I show these 3 slides, because it is how I filter everything that I do, which is, who is your audience? What's the message? And the following thing I'm going to show you, it's taken me 12 years to get to this point and realize this is what I should be doing. And I think for a large part, this is what you should be doing as well. With that message and target audience in mind, for the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. That's what I'm trying to do in creating a business dashboard or a business data visualization. One more thing to keep in mind, and I'm sure Jeff and other people in this ridiculously good Tableau user group have exposed you to, there are certain things that humans are really good at and certain things we're not really good at. And let me give you an example. Comparing the length of bars. this is 3 different ways to visualize 2 data points. A is 37 and B is 75. Humans in general are ridiculously good at being able to look that B looks like in it, looking at the bar chart that's over here, that B is about twice as big as A. Those of you who are really anal retentive will go, oh, it looks like it's even slightly bigger. Well, good for you. If you have eyes that are that acute, it is slightly bigger. People are terrible in general at judging this. Most people think that B is 1.5 times as large as A. It is twice as large in terms of area. And then humans are incredibly good at seeing difference in shades of color or of hue. In fact, even the most minor gradations they're good at, but they're terrible at being able to say how much more blue is this and that. I don't know anyone on the planet that can look at B and say, oh, that's twice as blue as A. So just keep that in mind. All right, confession. I'm looking at some of the stuff that people are making in Tableau and in the data visualization world, and certainly around the Makeover Monday project that Andy Kriebel, he used to run that with Andy Cotgreave, now with Eva Murray. They have a wonderful book about it that's out. And I'm looking at some of the stuff people are making, and I am completely intimidated by this. And I'm supposed to be really good at this stuff. So I'll look at something like this. This is from Johnny Walker, and he did this at least a year ago, maybe more than that. And God, this guy was so good with Tableau. Tableau hired him. This is Tableau. I barely have a clue how to make something like this, and he was doing this stuff before there were even density marks in Tableau. And then here's a fellow Zen master, Mike Cisneros, and he has this Tableau Follow Friday. I don't know exactly what this all is, and it's just showing all the different people that he's followed on Twitter and on Tableau Public who have created some work. And I'll confess, I really don't know how to make something like that. I could download the workbook and reverse engineer it. So I'll look at this and think, gosh, I don't even know how to make this thing. Is this the type of stuff I should be making? This is a beautiful dashboard. It's not done in Tableau. Jeff hipped me to this probably a year and a half ago. It's done by Georgia Lupi, showing a fascinating analysis of all the people who have won a Nobel Prize. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later. So I want to get, this is really exalted type of work, and I could never even approach making something like this. She has a really brilliant designer's eye, as well as an incredible handle on analytics. But let's look at some Makeover Monday stuff. And I'm not picking on this. I think this is a great initiative. I'm just concerned with some of the takeaways some people may have some of the time. So let me show you some of the stuff I'm looking at, and I'm wondering, how does someone take this in when they see how everybody is doing stuff? So the idea behind Makeover Monday is that the curators of this, Eva and Andy, will find a data visualization that's out in the wild, as well as the data that supports it. They'll show it to the public and say, hey, here was this graphic. Here's this data. What do you think of this? Is there something else in the data you'd rather show? If it's the same thing, would you do it differently? So let me show you some examples. So Snapchat is top with American teens. This is showing the ascendancy of Snapchat from spring 2015, that's the first bar, to fall of 2017. And the question was, of these different tools that you use, which is your favorite? And that Snapchat went for only 11% saying it was their favorite to 47%. Is this the best way to show this? Here's the graphic, here's the source data. Okay, however many hundreds of people participate in this initiative, let's see what you come up with. And here somebody came up with a waffle chart trying to show that comparing the different things that are happening. And you can see, Snapchat going from 11% to, okay, we got like a 10 by 10 grid here, 47%. Here is something that was done by Iron Viz competitor Corey Jones. And he's showing that Snapchat went from worst to first, And he's trying to show how much, not just that it went from fourth place to first place, but how much larger it is. And he's using what a technique first put forth in Tableau by Roddy Zakovich. Roddy calls it an area bump chart. For those Power BI users who are out there, this is in fact a native chart. It's called a ribbon chart. And I can't help but anytime I see a ribbon chart or an area bump chart, it just reminds me of this. It's a yellow submarine for those of you who are of. If there's anyone in the room that doesn't know Yellow Submarine, I'll be disappointed, and I'm going to say that's bad parenting, but we'll move on. Here's someone, this was done by Data Waj, I should find out who that is, and said, hey, how about a simple line chart? I like this one a lot. Really easy comparison of stuff. And I can see this one from 11% to 47%, and I compare, it's playing into stuff humans do well. I can see how much higher this is off a common baseline to this and how much higher this is. And then Roddy Zakovich, the guy who has wicked chops in terms of being able to make incredibly ornate visualizations. Here's what he did. He's the one that came up with that area bump chart, aka the ribbon chart, aka the yellow submarine chart. Here's what he did. And I'm thinking, man, this is spot on. Playing into things people do really well, relative position of things to a common baseline. He's using he's not even bothering with the intermediary periods. He's done a slope chart, and he's made the thing he wants to focus on in yellow. I think this is terrific and super clear. Let's look at another example. Here is if you can parse this graphic, you're fantastic. I can't. It is what the most profitable companies made per second in 2000. I think this is in 2016 or 2017. Here's how to read this. Apple in 2016 or 2017, let's say it was a year ago, made $1,444.76 every second. In the time it's taken me to tell you this, they've made $20,000, no, $22,000, no, $24,000, no, $26,000. Insane. But it's hard for me to make a comparison. Well, how much bigger is Apple than the 25th company, etc.? So let's see what the world started doing with this. Hey, Makeover Monday mavens, here's this initial visualization. Here's this data set. Let's see what you come out with. And Zach's Viz, I love this. Super clean, easy. Nice little Cole Nussbaumer Knaflic. Hey, let's call the key takeaway out. Highlighting Apple in blue. And I can see, it's almost twice as big as the next biggest company in terms of profit per second. Bravo. Really nice work there. Here is Curtis Harris, former Tableau Iron Viz champion, and works at Pluralsight. So many of his dashboards have a dark background. And he did a mobile dashboard. He did a beautiful job here, but he's making it super easy for me to do the comparison, read the numbers, and I can see, hey, how much larger is this bar than this other bar? Clean, simple, nice way to take it in. This is from Philip Riggs, who has a wicked superpower that I wish I had. He decided, he wanted to look at the top pharmaceutical company in the bunch because he's very involved with medications and their impact on environment and impact on animals. So he decided to look at Gilead Sciences and see where they in the bunch. But he's a really clever cartoonist, so he has what looks like a drug pill here and a cool caricature there, but he's able to draw you in, but he's using a nice clean chart and honing into what humans do well, comparison of bars. Let me show you some other stuff, and I'm not picking on this. I think there's some great work coming out. Here is something from Mark Bradburn, and he does some tremendous work. And what he's done with this is the length of the arcs. So each of those arcs is a different company, and the longer the arc is, the more profit for each company. And you would interact over this with this, and you'd say, oh, what's this second bar? What's this third bar, etc. And now I'm going to make one minor change to this visualization, and I bet you would totally buy into the change that I'm making. Okay. So, this is how profitable 25 companies are. If had you told me that this was a North Korean ballistic missile test, I would totally buy it. Oh my God, look, they're getting close to being able to hit Los Angeles. What are we going to do? I have no fault with Mark saying, hey, I want to try something. I want to experiment with something and see what this might look like. I may reject it, may not be something for business. My concern is that when this stuff comes out, the number of likes and retweets on Twitter suggests, wow, people kind of went nuts for this thing. Now realize, look at this thing. It's beautiful and it's engaging, but I can't even tell who besides Apple are the other arcs that are there. I have to interact with this. So my concern is people may look at it and think, oh, is this the type of thing I should be making? Because gosh, a lot of people liked it and a lot of people retweeted it. Right around the same time I was seeing this particular Makeover Monday, New York Times had this article, what teenagers are learning from online porn. It's readily available to teenagers. And the concern was kids will be looking at this stuff and thinking, is that what I should look like? Is that how I should behave? Is that what I should be doing? And similar concern with this, which is, I don't mean to demean it as saying, this stuff is viz porn. I think it's beautiful and engaging, but it's, gee, is this what I should be making? Is this what I should be doing? Now, it doesn't help that until recently, Tableau's home screen looked like this. That looks cool, doesn't it? It's useless. It's not going to tell you anything, but it's got like these curvy, colorful type of things in it. So I've been doing this stuff now for more than 12 years. I'm pretty comfortable with what I should be doing and when. But if I were relatively new to it, I might be looking at all this stuff and wonder, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to be making this stuff? And I now want to focus on this dashboard, which I had not seen. Jeff showed it to me, and he loves it, and I see why. It is Georgia Lupi's exploration of Nobel laureates, and it is not a quick read. It's not something that you're going to instantly take in and go, oh, I get it. But she has this legend or this up at the top that explains how to read most of it, which is she wanted to explore the ages of people when they get their Nobel Prize, and how is the age of this person compared to the average within a category compared with the overall age. And so we can see we've got chemistry, economic sciences, physics, brilliant move tilting this thing, 35, 40 degrees so you can fit more things on it. And you can see the ages above or below the average for the category, the overall average. Do you also notice that there are some of the marks have a little halo around them, a larger circle around them? Does anybody know what that designates? If something has a halo around it, what does it mean? It doesn't mean that they are holy. It means something else. So Jeff, I'm going to ask you to poll our data visualization colleagues here and find out if anybody can guess what a purple or magenta circle around a dot means.
We have two hands up. Go ahead. Ladies.
Yes, women. So let's put that aside for a minute and we'll discuss that. And you could probably see just from this snippet, there aren't too many circles that have a magenta halo around it. There aren't too many women Nobel laureates. I like this. Here's something I can really relate to here. A nice bar chart here showing that if you're in chemistry, you're probably going to need a PhD. But if you're in literature, you can see, hey, no degree uh, uh, does not leave you out of the possibility of becoming a Nobel laureate. And then, hey, here's the flow. Here's where they all ended up teaching, how many went into Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Caltech, Columbia, Cambridge, etc. And then love this part here, little factoids, certain things that Georgia decided to extract from all this data. This is my favorite, sibling pride, that there are brothers who each got a Nobel Prize, one in economics and one in medicine. Can you imagine their grandmother's bragging rights? Holy crap. In any case, this is really a sumptuous piece of work, and I see why Jeff likes it so much. I can absolutely get lost in this thing for an extended period of time. But suppose you wanted to ask the question, how many women have won a Nobel Prize? Are there more in certain areas? Are there more now than there were 100 years ago? Loopy's dashboard wouldn't provide easy answers to that. So I feel I'm about to do something which is almost sacrilegious. I feel I'm taking this stunning piece of design work. So I'm taking, if I were to compare it and say, well, what's the equivalent of that in terms of music? I'm going to take Elvis Presley at the top of his game, and I'm going to turn it into this. For those of you who don't know, that's Lawrence Welk. And if you can keep it that you don't know, that's a good thing. But let me take that gorgeous piece, but I'm now focusing on something else. I'm not trying to make something that someone's going to get lost in and explore. I just want to answer a specific question. Male versus female Nobel laureates. And I think this, yes, you could bring a designer in and they could make this look more beautiful, but it absolutely nails it. I can see immediately, 95% of Nobel laureates have been men versus 5% for women. There's barely any, there's nothing in economics. Maybe there's one. There's a handful in physics, lots in peace, lots in literature. And hey, I can see how many of each of these, you can see this is a unit histogram here. And I can see, hey, at least the trend seems to be getting a little bit better. In the last few decades, there are more women. Now, is this a better dashboard than the other one? Is the other one better than this? No, they're answering different questions for different audience. I would argue that if you're looking for one thing, which is men versus women, is this doing a better job? Now, the Jeff and I spend a fair amount of time with this in our workshop, and Jeff found a companion graph to this that I think is absolutely brilliant. Jeff, have you shown this specifically in the Cincinnati Tug? And also, how many people have seen this graph?
I have not shown it to the Tug, and most of the room is raising their hands.
This is a sophisticated bunch of people here. In any case, it's the reason most people I know have seen this is that Edward Tufte, in his seminal work from 1983, The Visual Display of Quantitative Data, has said, this may be the best statistical graph ever done. And I'll try to go through this quickly. This is showing Napoleon's attempt to conquer Moscow in, I think, between 1812 and 1813. This was done by Charles Menard in the mid to late 19th century. And it fits perfectly on top of you could take this thing and see, oh my gosh, this is perfectly fits on a map on Lithuania. And what it's showing is the thickness of this tan-colored bar. Some argue originally it was red and it faded. This is the number of troops Napoleon had trying to attack Moscow, and the black is the number of troops in retreat. And you can see we started with a very thick bar. Black is a very thin bar. If you're wondering what this is and why it gets thicker, this is some additional troops coming to join and help because they're being attacked from the rear. Here, is the temperature outside during the retreat, and it was frigging cold. This is on the Ramo scale, but in Fahrenheit and Celsius, it is in the major minus degrees. And people are dying either in battle, they're dying from exposure, or they're dying from disease. And is this the best statistical graph ever done? Seth Godin, who is a marketing guru and written a lot of best-selling graphs, thinks this is a terrible graph. You know, Tufte loves it because it shows all these things, and in 15 minutes you can learn a lot. And he said that that's not what business executives want. They want quick answers, quick decisions, etc. So Jeff found this wonderful makeover of this chart. It comes from Jorge Cameos, who is a wonderful Excel user. So he decided to present it this way, dumbing it down for the executive. By the way, great use of a pie chart. I have no problem with this. I think this is the right chart. 2 slices and show how little is there. Okay, so getting back to this, well, what am I supposed to do? Adam McCann, fellow Tableau Zen master, does some wonderful work, and I think it's one of the few people I know who's pretty well versed in making data art, making infographics, and certainly making business dashboards. Wrote this great blog post where he said he's got this data set, and he said, I'm just going to make art because I think it's pretty. I'm going to try to do an infographic, which he will argue is his least strong suit. And then here's a business dashboard, all from the same data source. And I highly recommend you look at this blog post. I won't read the whole thing, but in my opinion, dashboards generally have a specific, or at the very least a known audience. Infographics are meant to engage a broader, perhaps ill-defined audience in order to tell a story. Data art, however, can have no defined audience. It can be art for art's sake. Therefore, it can further emphasize aesthetic over understanding or accuracy. So think about what you're doing most of the time in your work. You're probably, if you bought the big book of dashboards, you're taking a workshop, it's probably around the business use. I don't think you need to do that thing in orange up there, that you need to attract, inform, enlighten, and engage. That if you're making an infographic for Wired magazine, oh yes, you do. You need to make sure someone doesn't turn the page. They're looking at page 13. You don't want them to turn the page and look at page 14. So you got to do something that says, I'm going to grab you. I'm going to do a cool headline. There's going to be this cool graphic. I think this is what you should be doing. You're informing people, you're enlightening them. And if you're doing that, they're going to be totally engaged with your work. That doesn't mean you shouldn't make it attractive. By all means, make your stuff attractive. Now, here's some wonderful work from Adam McCann. And I've seen his business work. It doesn't look anything like this. He would not be making a donut chart along the bottom down here because it's hard to make the comparison. But that's not the point of this. The point of this was, hey, someone who's into the Beatles or just colorful stuff might want to look at it, explore it, and have fun with it. But I want to stress that if you are more in the infographic realm of things and that your work does end up saying, gee, it isn't just going to be straight ahead business facts. I've got to attract people as well. It is, in fact, possible to make visualizations that are beautiful without sacrificing analytic integrity. I'm going to show you a handful of people who do that and do that really well. And I'm going to cite a blog post that Stephen Few had a couple of years ago, where he was disturbed that Time magazine took a pretty important subject and kind of dumbed it down with some graphics that were unnecessarily cutesy or unnecessarily, for lack of a better word, verbose. Why we still need Women's Equality Day. This is an infographic that Time.com put together. And the point was more than 50% of the voters in the United States are women, but they are grossly underrepresented in Congress, in the Senate, in governorships, in the Supreme Court. Now, that has changed to some degree in the last election, but it's still pretty skewed. And few looked at this thing, and I'm only able to show 1/3 of it. The thing just scrolls forever. And he said, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you make something like this? Super easy to do the comparison. And you can see the voters, more voters are here. I took a stab of it as well. This is what I put together. And I can see more voters are women. But it's super easy for me to make the comparison and see Supreme Court versus state legislatures versus Senate versus Congress, House of Representatives, etc. Let me show you what polyglot and polymath Alberto Cairo did. Alberto has written the functional art, truthful art. He's a professor of data journalism at the University of Miami. He has a new book coming out. He has a tour that he's doing called Visual Trumpery. And he'll be the first to say he did this in about 10, 15 minutes. And he will be the first to say that, yeah, I know the silhouettes of the humans aren't that good. Looks like the guy over here is either holding a boomerang or a gun instead of a clipboard. But he wanted to show, hey, I can draw people in. I can have a cool headline. You'll stop, you'll look at this, but he did nothing to sacrifice the analytical integrity of this. He's using a super easy to compare bar chart because humans are good at this, but he still brought you in. He made something that looks cool. And, just look at how much space I need on the thing on the left, where every chart is a different chart. So I have to adjust and think, oh, now I'm looking at it this way. Now I'm looking at it this way versus this thing that's over on the right. So in thinking about, what it is you should be doing, I'm just going to come back to the way I started the presentation and 3 things I try to remember. Who is your audience? What's the message? And for the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And if you're using that as your compass, you'll probably do pretty well. And if we want to continue the discussion about this, we're trying to embody all of that in the big book of dashboards. And if you have comments or suggestions, or you think, hey, I think you're wrong, which, by the way, great work comes from people saying, I think you're wrong. That's the whole point of the chart chat Jeff and I are going to be doing. We're going to try to resurrect the debates that we had in writing the book. And you can follow me on Twitter at VizBizWiz. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. And if not, gosh, thanks so much for your time and attention today.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Steve? I can relay them. Oh, yep.
I don't have any question, but I just want to give feedback that what Steve said really helped me, because when I look at these fancy visualizations on Twitter and stuff, it used to make me wonder that how long will it take me to reach at that stage, and when can I make this beautiful visualization, and what if I'm also creative and I don't know how to put these things together. So it always used to make me wonder, can I be a good visualizer? But what Steve said, so it will make help me resolve this conflict which I was having, and I can do it
Sure. Were you able to hear that, Steve? Are you there? Hello? I think we lost him. And he's out. Let's see if he checks back in with us here. Are you there, Steve? Oh, there he comes.
Yikes. I don't know what I did nothing. I swear I didn't touch anything, man. And it just totally crashed on me.
Were you able to hear her comment at all?
No, my apologies. So Jeff, you're going to have to distill it or repeat it if you don't mind.
No problem. She didn't like your presentation at all.
Smart woman. This is a smart woman. Sign her up.
No, the comment was it wasn't a question. It was more of a comment. She appreciated the discussion about should I be creating these things because she sees all these wonderful pieces on Twitter and is sort of conflicted about that when she sees all that work and the work that she's doing. So she appreciated the dialogue about that.
I agree. You know, there was kind of a response. Someone put together this thing called Real Tableau at one point, because the stuff you're seeing with Makeover Monday, and most of those examples are, hey, here was something that was in the magazine. It wasn't part of a business dashboard, so it's, oh, let me make more magazine worthy stuff. Jeff knows that if you want to make stuff that's irresistible to people, your stakeholders, make it about them, make individualized dashboards, make it where they're somewhere in the dashboard. It's like, here's how you're performing versus other people, and people will love your stuff. But it's difficult because the stuff you're seeing in Makeover Monday and Twitter and the stuff people are getting excited about really isn't business dashboard stuff. And so that was kind of part of my response to that. So I'm glad you liked it.
Great. Anybody else? Nope.
So wait, hey Greta, come over here. I want to get a nice. Here's what I do to get high reviews from speakers. You know, when I'm doing sessions, Greta, say hi to everybody. There we go. Oh, what a cute dog. There we go. Yeah. Well, yeah. If I'm crapping out as a presenter or doing a bad job or the content stinks, just show your dog and people will love it. All right, Jeff, thanks so much. Hope people get home unscathed with whatever weather you have. And until the next time.
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
All right, and with that, Mr. Hahn, I'm gonna share my screen and turn it over to you. There you go.
Sure. Well, I'm Ethan Hahn. I work for Jeff, and I was going to talk tonight about dual access. First of all, how many folks here are like very, very, very new to Tableau? Number of folks? Okay, great. Especially Craig. So what I wanted to do was something practical, so that you can walk out of here and see what's a dual access, how do I do it. I wanted to start with a very basic level of stuff, but also then have some other examples that are a little more complicated and will take a little bit more time. So to start off with, the data set that I've got here for us is actually, let's give it a look. These are actually all the runs that I've been on. So my wife and I started doing a couch to 5K thing where you run a little bit and walk, run, walk, run, walk. Do that a few times and try to work your way up until you can run a 5K. I, of course, started tracking all of the data for all of those runs. So this data set represents from 2006, when Jess and I started doing that, until this last Tuesday. There would have been a run this morning, but we had an ice storm, and I have the grace of an IT professional, so me running on ice is a bad idea. So the data set just has, I've got a run ID here. Can you all see this well enough? So there's a unique ID for it. I've got the date time of the run itself.
Yeah.
The top one? The big button. Big button. There we go. All right, so the run date time, can I hold it still enough? Yes, just let it go. Oh, I see, perfect. Run date time there. The number of seconds that the run took. So this is my duration, essentially, how many miles it was. I've actually got a course. I've been using GMAP-pedometer forever. I've never really trusted the little wrist thingies and all of that have the GPS, just because, especially if you're running on a track, if it's off by 20 feet on a track and it's to the inside versus the outside of the track, it can make a significant difference in what you're tracking. So I just go to this website and click each spot where I know I ran and get through it. So then information about the location, I put in the state here. I've got the country, the zip code. Which one? This one. Sorry, here we go. state, zip code, longitude and latitude for stuff that wasn't, this is just, for me, it's to the zip code level. I'd like to get it a little better in the future. Some other information about the route itself. So that's our data set. Individual runs, I've got a distance, I've got a time, I've got a date when we went on the run. So to start off with, a very, very simple viz, I'm going to take the run date time and put it up here on columns. So you've got all of your years going across. I'm going to take the total number of miles run, and that's a sum. I'm going to turn this into a bar chart, and I've got a really simple bar chart that shows here's how many miles in each of these years. You can look at this as how many miles in each individual year. You can also use a table calculation. Tableau has this option for a quick table calculation. What I use pretty often is the running total. No pun. So here it just adds cumulatively. This is the running total. So by the time we get to 2018, as of now, it's been 1,987 miles total. So what if you want to see both that cumulative and the individual year, the totals for each year? That's where you can create a dual axis. So creating a dual axis is really easy. You just take your measure. I'm going to take, as you saw before, I took my miles and I just dragged it up to the rows. I'm just going to do the same thing again. Take my miles, drag it up to the rows. And now I've got two vises. They're both identical. They're both the same thing. But I can take the second one and say, hey, use my table calculation on this one. Make it a running total. Maybe I don't want the bars in this case. I can just come over here to this marked card and say, hey, instead of bars, turn it into a line. Now I've got the bar chart. I've got the cumulative chart down there. I can see both of that data. But just like with Excel, how you can do a dual axis, with Tableau, you can do the exact same thing. You just come up to your miles, click over there on that little arrow and say dual axis. When I click on that, it basically makes a Pareto chart. Now it's not technically a Pareto chart. I guess those normally you have it sorted up by the largest number going to the smallest so that then you can see that whole 80-20 effect. But in this case, I like having the dates along the bottom. So it's a very simple dual axis. You've got individual, you've got the running, some of the miles, and it's really simple to put together. Let's do one more of those. This one will do for duration. So I'm going to take my run date time and put it up here on columns. Take my seconds this time. This is the total number of seconds. And again, make it into a bar chart. Another way you can create that dual axis is to control click on the item that you've got there on the rows, drag it over here and let go. And now you've duplicated the information that's in that axis. It's another way to create your dual axis. Here, we're going to make this the running total, turn it into a line, and say, make it a dual axis. Very, very simple. All right, so dual axis is handy not just for analytical things like this, but also for formatting things. There's some fun stuff you can do with formatting by using the dual axis technique. One of those things, let's put our run date time up here on columns again. We're going to use our miles again. I'm going to create a lollipop chart. Once again, we've got our bars. So you've got all of these bars. Sometimes when you've got a viz like this with your long bars, it can get really crowded. You've got a lot of blue, a lot of stripes, a lot of mess, a lot of garbage. And so you might want to make smaller bars. Well, you can control the size of the bar in Tableau. You can just come over here on size, make it smaller. But something a technique that is often used for this, especially when you want to highlight the ends of those lines, is to create a lollipop chart. All I'm going to do for that is duplicate my axis again, make this a dual axis, and then I'm going to change this mark from a bar. I'm going to make it a circle. Now you can see these little circles popping out over the top. All I got to do here, resize the circle, make it a little bit bigger, go back to my bar, make that size a little smaller, and boom, you've got this beautiful lollipop chart. It's got the ball on the end that shows the actual size, but then you got this small little stick that the lollipop's sitting on. Now, if you look closely, something you might notice here, you've got 260 up here, and it's hard to see that axis line. But if you follow it all the way over, the line comes to about there, not on 260. These two axes aren't really aligned very well, right? And in fact, if I hover over the bars down here, I don't know if you can see that, but it comes up to somewhere near the middle-ish of the circle. If I hover on this long one, it's almost to the top and even a little bit beyond the top of that circle. And the issue here is that those axes aren't aligned with one another. In some cases, that's really important not to have them aligned. If we're back on this chart, you don't want to have 130K matching 130K, or else your running total is going to be totally off the chart. But over here, in this case, you want those aligned because people see this and expect it to be in the same perspective. Super simple to solve this. All you got to do is come over to this axis, right click and say synchronize axis. And now your 260 lines up with your 260. These bars are all centered on that lollipop. So it's a really simple formatting technique. Another one I just saw recently at the Tableau conference. Jeff was presenting with Andy on doing 50 charts in 50 minutes. And one of the ones that Andy came up with was the thermometer chart. So like the old fundraising thermometers that you'd have for your book drive or whatever. Let's make one of those. So we put our run, date, time again here on your columns. I'm going to do my sum of miles. I'm going to change that to a bar. Now, in this case, we're going to do a dual axis, but it's not going to be on the sum of miles. I want to have a little bulb at the bottom. So instead of duplicating or anything like that, if you just double click up here on your rows, it opens up this inline spot. You can create your own pill right there. So I'm going to say that this is the average of 0. The average of 0 for most of the time is going to be 0. Pretty handy. Make this into a dual axis, and this really demonstrates how you have to synchronize your axis. Your 0 is right in the middle, and this is really not the 0 line on your bar chart. So if I come over here, right click, and synchronize my axis, now I can turn this 0 into a circle. I can up the size on it, right? Maybe that's a little too much. Put it back in here somewhere. I'm going to change the color on it just so it matches the rest of the thermometer. I back off the size on my bar. And now you've got a thermometer chart. So those are some fun formatting things that you can do with dual axis. Another place that it can be really handy is with mapping. Now, as you saw in the data set, I've got country, state, zip code, all that. Let's throw country on here. And it shows the different countries where I've run. I'm going to put the sum of miles onto color. And so you can see now we've got a map showing locations where I've gone on runs. So 5 miles in Canada total. I vacation. My wife and I go to Canada sometimes for vacations, and I'm more interested in bourbon than in running generally when I'm there. But a couple times, it took about 3 trips to get 5 miles in. Most of it, the U.S., 104 miles in Iraq, and a mile in Kuwait. So it's a map, kind of handy. It's cool, but I want to look at the states. Now, I don't have state information for Canada. You could use provinces. I don't have state information for Iraq. You could use their provinces as well. I don't have that data here. There are ways to solve that problem if you wanted to. But here, what I want to just demonstrate is the dual axis. I want to keep country information in there, but I also want to expose the state information. Once again, all you have to do is make your dual axis. So I drag my latitude over there. Either one of them, you can do either longitude or latitude. I just end up doing this one. Creates a duplicate of your map. Here you go in, say dual axis. Now you're back to the map that you had before, right? But you've got 2 marks cards, so you can have different details on each of those cards. So if we come in here and we say, all right, I've got country on details. I want to add state to details. So I just drag that over here. And now you can kind of see I've got all my states. Problem is I've got country over top of my state. So you can't hover and get to the tooltips. Too easy. All you got to do to solve that problem is just reverse the order of which is to the right and which is to the left. So I just drag this over here. And now my states are in front of country. And here you can hover over each of these states and see the total number of miles in each state. Do a little bit of formatting to make this a little bit more useful. I'm going to take my my country on the color. I'm going to back off, make it a little bit more opaque. I want to go to my map layers here, and I'm just going to wash out the map entirely. And so what you're left with is a map. You can see here's Canada, here's the US as a whole, but here's each individual state, and you can hover over each state where I've recorded runs. Most of them are going to be in Ohio. And then you can see over here, Iraq, Kuwait. This is one option for getting into that, but you're not forced with mapping in Tableau. You're not forced just to use an area map. Let's recreate this again. Just going to put country out here. I had miles on color. Did my dual axis. And make it a dual axis. And then add my state to the details. As easy as that to recreate this map, right? But for my countries, maybe I don't want to have the area map. It is kind of deceptive having Alaska out there. I've never run in Alaska. I've never been to Alaska or Hawaii. So instead of an area map, I'm going to change this to a circle. I'm going to put the sum of my miles on size, right? So now you can see the US is bigger than this tiny Canada. A little bit small, so I'm going to crank up the size on that. I'm going to crank it up all the way. Maybe dial back the opacity on that. And once again, go into my map layer and get rid of, just wash out all of those map layers. And now I've got something, it's kind of interesting. I'm going to throw country onto my labels. And let's see, you got to allow the labels to overlap. Kuwait and Iraq are kind of arguing with each other there. They do that. So let me put this over top. That's good. In the center, right? So now I've got Canada. You can't really see the dot. Maybe I want to put my sum of the miles on the labels as well to make it a little bit easier to see what we're looking at. But here you've got relative space. So the mapping, it's geographically accurate. You've got Canada, US, Iraq, so you've got that. You don't have the deception of the huge Canada. I should turn this opacity back up a little bit so you can see Canada's dot. I could also let me throw a border on there or something like that. Might make it easier to see. But now you can sort of see relative size. Obviously, it's circles, and as Steve explained, we don't tell the difference between circles very well, but you throw labels on there, you can kind of see the relative size, and you still have this representation of the states and their geography. So just another use case for using dual axis there with mapping. The last one I wanted to cover is the most complicated one. What I wanted to do was a control chart. So I'm not a statistician. So when I talk about a control chart and you say, wait, that's not what that's supposed to, whatever, that's probably true because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I can show you how to make it in Tableau. So what I want to do is have basically a control chart shows all these different instances, all these different measures. If you're in a factory, it shows the weight of the billiard ball that you're creating, right? Like you have this machine that puts out billiard balls and maybe you weigh them all and you see what is the distribution of weights, and they should all be exactly equal, but they won't be. And so you have all these different measurements. And so what's the mean weight? What's the standard deviation? And how many balls fall outside that standard deviation? Ish, that about right? Perfect. Close enough. So for our measurements, what we have is all of these individual runs. I'm going to create a measure for pace so you can see just how slow I actually am. So pace. And it's just going to be the sum of the seconds, right? Seconds divided by how many miles I ran. I'm going to actually turn this into minutes because it's a lot easier to see and understand if it's in minutes. So I just divide that by 60. So that's my pace. I am going to put my run date time here on my columns. Instead of grouping it up by years, I want to see individual instances. So I'm going to take this all the way to the exact date, down to the day level. So here's all of the different dates. I am going to put run ID on my details, and I'm going to use pace on my rows. So now you see we've got a nice scatter plot. Each one of these dots, because I've got run ID, that unique ID, each on details, each one of these dots represents a separate run that I've done. Then the pace, this is in minutes per mile. Very slow, faster. The space where all that white is actual fast people, of which I am not one. So to make this a little easier to see sort of, what's going on, I like to put sizes on here. And I'm kind of recreating a chart that we developed at Unifund. I'll show you at the end. But basically recreating that chart. I'm going to change this from this automatic, which I assume is a shape or something, into a circle, explicitly making it a circle, size it up a little bit. And I like to make the color, make it a little bit opaque and throw a border on here. So doing that, you can see a whole bunch of different individual instances. Now the size is how far I ran. So these fast runs are also very, very short runs. So I did do a 6.5 minute mile. Yeah. At the absolute best ever. I also did 14-minute miles. So, but these larger runs you can see. Now, one other trick when you do a chart like this, let me just narrow in on just this much of it. And there's actually, I'll zero in a little bit closer yet, just for demonstration purposes. All right, so that's too close. And let me increase the size. So what you're going to see is, where'd they go? Yep, right in here. So you see there's a run here. Run number 527 is this bigger run. That run inside of it is a shorter run. But I can't hover over that run because I've got this bigger run in front of it. So how do you solve that problem? Well, it's really easy. Right now, I have this run ID on detail, and it is sorted by the natural order in the table, which is just low to high. So essentially, that's a proxy for the date as well, earlier dates to higher dates. So it just happens that the longer run was the day before the shorter run. I can change that sort order, though. I just click over here on this run ID. I say sort right there. And then you can sort by the data source order, alphabetic, or sort by a field. I'm going to choose field, and the field name is going to be miles. So as you see, it says, all right, sort my run ID, but sort it by the sum of the miles ascending. That means that the smallest number of miles is going to be first, and the larger miles are going to be second. Once you do that, now you come in here, and when you hover, the smaller one is on top. So handy little technique. The other thing is that when you've zoomed into data like this, like you saw how I did this, zoomed in on this and said keep only, and it got rid of all the other marks. Well, if I want to back that out, the way that Tableau creates that filter is just by creating a filter. We can even look at this, and you can see if we show the filter, it's just got every single day up there. And it just has check boxes on the ones that are left. So to get rid of it, all you got to do is just drag it off. You got rid of it. Now that filter's gone. So I'm going to size this back a little bit. So here's all of the runs that I've ever done. Actually not true. You see this gap in here? That was, there should be a lot of dots in there because that's when I was at basic training. And they provided lots of opportunities for running, but not a lot of opportunities for logging runs in Excel. So they don't really, yeah. So Now we want to make our control chart. Well, a control chart, here's a whole bunch of instances, right? And then we're going to have, yes. I'm sorry?
Is it okay to interrupt the time?
Sure, yeah.
You did that selection, and like in order to remove that selection, you remove that
Mhm.
from filter. What like I have faced this problem in the dashboard. Like I select something and then everything is filtered, and how to go back. Like do we have that same thing in the dashboard as well? Filter.
So the question is, if you've got this all filtered like this, and you excluded them, but you're in a dashboard view viewing someone else's viz, say, or just you in your own dashboard.
I am in my dashboard. But
Okay.
I'm in the dashboard view, and I don't think we have that filter tab. I was sure.
So if we have this and it's in the dashboard, I've got a filtered view here. This is in a dashboard itself. And I only want to keep those. So now I've got this. A couple things you can do. You can just do an undo, right? So you've looked at it, you've added these filters, whatever. You can just go back and back out that filter. Or you can, come over here and see this go to sheet. And it will show, hey, we've got exclusion and inclusion. And then from there, you can just get rid of those filters. And now when you go back to your dashboard, the filters are gone. Cool. I'm sure there's probably about 7 other ways that Jeff's thinking of right now to do exactly the same thing.
On the Tableau server, there's a button to revert, so you can actually revert right back to your original state of your viz. So that in production, they just click the revert button and it goes back.
All right, so we've got our instances here. Now what we need is you need for the control chart, you want your mean line, you want an upper bound and a lower bound. And normally that's going to be one standard deviation above and below your mean. So we create our calculated field for the mean, and that's just going to be the average of the pace, right? So what happens when I create an average of the pace for my mean, and I throw that onto a dual axis? I've just got the exact same chart I just created. Well, what did I do wrong? Well, I still have run ID here on the detail. Let me get rid of run ID, and I still have all of these bubbles. Well, what's happening is that I've got my columns is sliced to the level of the day, right? So that means each of these measurements, this is just the average pace within that day. And it's going to stay sliced up to the level of that day because that's the level that the viz is at. So what I actually need here is not, I can't just do the mean and let it get sliced up by Tableau. What I need is a level of detail calculation. So for those of you who have done them before, for those of you who haven't, this is not really going to be a full hearty explanation of level of detail, but just follow along as best you can, and I'll at least at a high level talk about it. So a level of detail calculation says, instead of calculating it at the level of detail that the viz has, I want to specify the level of detail. So right now it's slicing up by days. Yeah, how do I? There we go. Perfect. So instead of slicing up at the level of detail that the viz is presenting, which is day, I'm going to tell it what level to slice at. I could do that. Well, the syntax is fixed. And then you say at what level? Well, I could do it at the run ID level. Run ID. And say, give me the average pace. And what that's going to do is say, hey, at each run ID, tell me what that average pace is, which is the same thing basically that we're doing right now. Instead of that, I'm going to say, you know what? Don't fix it on any specific dimension. Just fix it across the entire viz. So every data point that I have, give me the average for the whole thing. So now it's going to take all of these measurements, average them up, and present. When we throw the mean up here, now they're all the same value, all the way across. So this is giving me the mean, my mean line. This is what I want. Now I got to do a couple things to clean this up. I'm going to get rid of run ID on the details. I'm going to get rid of the size. I don't need to size it. Instead of a circle, I'm going to change it to a line, so just each one connects with each other. Now I'm going to crank this opacity up, just a couple formatting things, and dial the size back a little bit. But essentially, now I've got my mean line. Now I can turn this into a dual axis. And that doesn't look like my mean. Once again, you have to synchronize the axis. If it's a situation like this where you're plotting two things of the exact same axis values, you got to hit that synchronize axis. And there, that looks like a mean. Great. Now let's calculate our standard deviation. So I'm going to come in here, create a calculated field, call it standard deviation. And this is just STDevP across the whole population of the pace. Once again, I don't want this calculated at the sliced up level of detail that the viz is presenting. I want to fix that to the level of the whole viz. So all the data points. So I'm just going to say fixed. Oh, sorry. So you can actually see it. So I'm just going to say fixed standard dev of the pace. And then I can create an upper bound and a lower bound. So create a calculated field for upper bound, which is just the mean. The upper bound is going to be the mean plus 1 standard deviation. And the lower bound is going to be the mean minus 1 standard deviation. So lower bound, mean minus standard deviation. So you see what we're looking at there. Mean minus a standard deviation. So now I take my lower bound and I add it as a dual axis, and I say dual axis, and Tableau says, no dual axis. What's the problem here? Well, you can only have one dual axis. That's why it's dual. It's not a tri-axis or quad axis. So what are we going to do? Well, this is not going to be the solution that works for us then. Let me back that off. What we can do here is use measure values and measure names. You have access to this thing down here called measure values. We're going to drag measure values right up here onto the dual axis, and it takes everything down here in measures and throws it onto the canvas down here. Now, I don't need all of these different data elements, so we can put measure names up here on filters, show that filter, and now I can just pick what I need. I don't want all. All I want is the lower bound, the mean, and the standard deviation, not the standard deviation, the upper bound is using the standard deviation. And now I've got a marks card where I can control that. I'm going to, once again, take my run ID off of there. I don't need the size. I don't need it to be a circle. I want a line. I am going to make that opacity back to 100%, resize it, all these little formatting things just to make it look a little cooler. And now I hit my dual axis and I synchronize my axis. And there is my control chart. So my running is out of control. A couple other things I wanted to do with this to show you, as long as we're dealing with some of these with the level of detail calculation. I always love to present this. So let me put a filter on the date time, in case I just want to see, hey, how have I been doing lately compared to before? What does that look like? So I just drag the filter over. It's going to be a range of dates. That looks great. I mean, and you can play around with formatting this, make it just do years or whatever else. But let me show that filter. So I got a filter up here. It starts in 2006 and goes up to Tuesday. So let me just filter up to my more recent runs. And you can see, here's my runs, here's my mean. Well, that doesn't look like my mean. That's definitely not the mean of this distribution. What's going on here? Well, let's go back to Tableau order of operations. And this is really cool stuff. This is the order in which Tableau does its calculations and its filters and all of that. So it starts with extract filters. So if you've got an extract filter, that's before the data even hits the canvas anywhere. Same thing with those data source filters. You're filtering stuff out before it even gets into Tableau, so nothing gets calculated on it. Then you got context filters. then you have this fixed level of detail calculation. Well, that's exactly what we just did, where we said, calculate this what's the average pace over the whole data set. Then your dimension filters come next. That means that our fixed level of detail calculation doesn't have any idea what this dimension filter is because it's already done before the dimension filter ever gets calculated. So, but notice we have this thing up there called context filters. Well, what's a context filter? And that is the magic that lets you filter on a dimension with fixed level of detail. All you got to do is come over here to your run date time and say, add to context. Once you do that, look at how my mean line goes up, and now it looks like the correct distribution with my standard deviations and all of that. What we've done by doing this is taken a dimension filter on that date time and promoted it. So now it's been promoted up to become a context filter. And before any level of detail calculation gets calculated, it's going to consider that filter. And it's that easy. You know, you just hit that add to context. It turns this gray color. And now you can see if I look back in here, where I was badass, I got my average pace, you know, down here is 9.2. Now it's like 10 something. So that's the context filter along with the level of detail and your dual axis with measure values and measure names. That was kind of the culminating exercise for us. I did want to show just one example. This is a report that kind of inspired me to do this this demonstration. This is a report we use at work. I've got all of the anything that's possibly tells you what it's about redacted. But essentially what's happening is these are different deals, and it shows the performance of these different deals over time. The dual axis trick on this one is that you've got it's scattered all over, right? You got high, you got low. But what I wanted to also show was sort of more an aggregate over time. So I just took, this is each year's weighted average. So this metric, as you go up and down, I have a fixed level of detail. It's fixed to the level of the year of that deal. And then I do the same calculations that create the metric. But then you just, now you can kind of see these trends over time. Like 2001, 2008, 2009, and then more recent times. Kind of like let you walk through that rather than having a trend line that's all swoopy and all of that. So it's another use of dual axis. And that is my half hour. Any questions? Anything you can answer quickly? And then I can have Jeff answer because he'll be much better at doing so. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Ethan. Jump out of this and over here. So how many of you have downloaded or tried 2018.3? Woo-hoo. A lot of new features in 2018.3. If you've followed along the releases over the last few years, they stopped the 8, 9, 10 versions of Tableau. 10.4 or 5 or whatever it was really the last version. And then they moved to years. So 2018, they're trying to do a quarterly cadence for releases because they have so many new features that are coming along. So 2018.3 was released right around the conference time. Been playing with it in demo for a while, expecting a 2018.4, but we're not much time left for the year. So anyway, I want to show you some of these new features. The new features, sometimes they're small features along the way. Sometimes they're big features. This 2018.3 release has a lot of game-changing features. One I showed in the last TUG meeting that was new as extensions, and that really kind of opens up to custom code. And there's some really cool ones in 2018.3 that have really kind of changed the dynamic of how Tableau works. So if you're following any of this on Twitter, you've probably seen lots and lots of examples for this. So let me show a couple of them. The first one I want to show is probably the most valuable feature that I think they've added because it just brings tremendous power to Tableau, and that's set actions. So honestly, up until now, I haven't used a whole lot of sets. Sets were pretty basic. Set is like a Venn diagram. You're either in or you're out. That's a set. You're either in the popular kid group or you're not in the popular kid group, right? And that was really what you could do with it. There's certain things you could do, but the problem is you couldn't dynamically change those sets. And so what they did is they added set actions. Up until now, you've only had 3 actions. When you go to a worksheet or a dashboard actions or worksheet actions, there's 3 type of actions that you historically had. You had a filter action, you had a highlight action, and you had a URL action. That was it, just those 3. They've now added one called change set values, which is what I'm going to talk about here. There's another one in there, but I'll come back to that. So change set values. So what that means is that I can interact with a visualization. I can click on a point, and by clicking on that point, I can have Tableau decide whether that point should be added to the group or subtracted from the group. And what that means then is I can control where that point goes. I can control the granularity of that point. I can add it to the popular kid, or I can remove it from the popular kids. What that then allows us to do is let us drill down into things. I'll show you a whole bunch of use cases here, but one of the popular ones this gives us is a drill down capability. For example, this level of detail in this viz, you'll notice in this tree map, there's really 2 different levels of detail right now. There's a level of category like furniture, technology, and office supplies. That's like the top level of the category. Then you'll see there's a subcategory underneath it called phones and machines and accessories. But you'll notice that subcategory is only showing in the blue section. It's not showing in the purple. It's not showing in the green. And then there's another hierarchy underneath that, which is state. What state are this happening? So there's 3 levels of hierarchy: category, subcategory, and state. What we do is we create a category set. Let's just go over here and edit the set. You'll see that there's simply a set. We just created a set based on category. We went to category, right click, said create set. That's how you do it. Like there really is no magic to creating a set. You go to category, you right click or hit the drop down, you create, and you say set. You're going to get a set. So there's your category set. All right. Then the next thing you do is go to subcategory. So we go to subcategory. We do the same thing. Hit the drop down box, create set. We could do that in Tableau 8 probably. So a long time ago, we could do sets. So we created 2 sets, one for category, one for subcategory. That's not where the magic happens. All right. Then the next thing you'll see is that there's this pill on here called drill. Let me make this a little wider so you can kind of read it. But you have a pill here on your details called drill to subcategory and drill to state. So what are those fields? Let's go see what they do. So let's start with the drill to subcategory. This is what the formula looks like. You'll notice it's not very complex. If category set, if you're in the set, if you're in, then you'll have a true. So if you're in the set, then I want you to use subcategory, else don't use anything and end. So if you're in the popular kids group, we're going to add subcategory. Otherwise, you don't get subcategory. All right, click OK. We do the same exact thing for state. We have a field for that. It says if you're in the subcategory of the popular kids and you're in the popular kids group, then I want you to add state. Otherwise, don't do anything. Just hit end. All right, so we take those 2 fields, we add it to the level of detail here through the text field, so the labels, so we can see the labels. And the last step is to go to your worksheet. You go to actions. You add an action. I have 2 actions in here. And the action that I'm going to add is a change set value. And when you do that, I'll just edit it to show you what it looks like. You'll see what is your target sheet. In this case, I'm doing a sheet, so I only have one choice. Tree map. I'm going to click on the sheet. When I select something, what do I want to do? And this is the new part that Tableau added. It says in your set of the Superstore, you have this thing called subcategory. I want you to, it's going to add it in there. When you clear the selection, you keep it in the set. So when you unclick, it stays in the popular group. Okay? That action then allows me to go over to office supplies. When I click office supplies, what's going to happen? It's going to go down to subcategory. When I click on subcategory, what's going to happen? It's going to use the drill here and say, okay, if you're in, we already know we're in the popular kid over here of office supply. Now we're in the popular kid subgroup of storage. When I click on that, it's going to add state and drill down and break to state. So by clicking on this, now I'm drilling down into something. Imagine drilling up and down in a chart. I can now take a map. I can start at a country level, click on it, it goes to state, click on it, it goes to county, click on it, it goes to zip code. I can just drill it all the way down, and I can drill back up. I can drill over to another category. I can click all around and it'll just drill right in. That's one very powerful feature of sets. Click on something, it adds it to the set. Once it's in the set, you can create a rule and say, okay, well, if you're in the set, then add this level of detail. And if you're in that level of detail, add this level of detail. So that's one really cool feature of it. Here's a bubble burst. I did this a long time ago with a parameter. You would come in here. This is basically Hans Rosling's viz of life expectancy and infant mortality. This is his viz was all the countries. Well, he would take a country and say, not all, this is Africa, and we can see Africa is way down in the bottom, but not all countries in Africa are the same. Some countries are more like Asia. Some countries are really low. Well, now with the set action, I can click on it, burst them, and I can see the African countries that are way up here, and I can see the African countries that are way down there. I can burst the dots, sort of explode them. That's all done with a set action. I can do that on the red dot. I can do that on the orange dot, and I just have it set that whatever I click on, it's adding the next level of detail through this calculation called details country. Same exact calculation that I showed you a minute ago. It just says, if you are in the popular group of region, that's what happens when I click on blue, you're now in the popular group, then add the detail of country, else don't do anything, click end. So when I click you, you're now in the popular group and you get the extra level of detail. All right, what else can you do with this? There's endless options. I imagine there's probably 500 different uses for set actions. Here's one I did where on a hover action, rather than a click action, when you hover over any point, that point is in the group. And that group is added up here. See, it says in, out, latitude, in, out, latitude. So if you're in the popular group, then you're on color. If you're in the popular group, you're on size. So as I hover, the point changes, and now I have a highlight wherever I bring my mouse. I can highlight whatever point I want. So just a highlighter, it makes the dot bigger, makes it yellow. Along the same lines, I use Ethan's trick of a dual access. Well, if I do a dual access, then I can control the marks. I can have one mark for the little dots. I can have another mark for a big dot, and I can duplicate it just like Ethan did on his map. And now when I move around, whatever point I pick on, I'll have this sort of area radial circle. I think I figured out that was exactly 3.2 miles. So there's a 3.2 mile radius around, you know, the center of that dot. Those are the dots that are in a 3.2 mile radius of my home dot. That's all done with set actions. This particular set action, am I on a dashboard or a sheet? Looks like I'm on a sheet. And this set action you'll see works on hover. So on the map, when I hover, take this geo midpoint, add it to the latitude set, and when I'm off the point, keep the value. If I move to the next point, the value changes. And you can see you'll see the latitude up there. The latitude and longitude are changing in the title. So you can see that my latitude and longitude is changing. I just have a second pill duplicated with a much bigger circle around it. And if you wanted to set that to a certain size, this is separate from set actions, but if you click on that point right there, this is already built into Tableau. Tableau has your square and radial. You can do a radial search from the center of a point. So you can click on here and you can kind of see like how big your circle is. So I just found the same circle and realized it's probably a little bigger than 3.2. I guess it's 3.5 or something, but that's how I figured out how big the circle was, and I could set it to whatever size I wanted. All right. Lots of people are doing lots of fun things with set actions, highlighting things in a data table. You can make things disappear. I had a list of things on the left-hand side, and when I click them, they disappear on the right-hand side. easy to do because when I click on it, now I'm taking you out of the popular group, right? So I just take you out of the set. All right, moving on. Another big feature that Tableau released is called transparent sheets. Before in Tableau, you could not have one sheet on top of another. You could float things on top of each other on a dashboard, but if you did that, you couldn't see through the top sheet. So as an example of what this might look like, here's a tree map of the countries in the world with their population. So this is at country level. This is Asia, this is Africa, this is the Americas. Maybe you want to show that label. So here is an example of how you can do that now with transparent sheets on a dashboard. This is the population with country. This is a wireframe, basically. Kind of hard to see the outline, but that's a tree map right there with gray lines. Here, I'll make the lines black so you can see them. So there's black lines right there where your Asia, Africa, Americas. All I did here is a level of detail of region on this sheet. So I have one sheet at the level of detail of region. I don't have country in here to burst it up by country. And I'll hit the back button there. And then the other sheet has region in here for color, but it also has country on detail. So it bursts these into the country, right? So what I'm going to do is take this one here, put it on the bottom, take the second one, put it on the top. In old Tableau, I would have never seen the one on the bottom because the one on the top would be on top of it and I couldn't see it. Even if I made it transparent with opacity, you can't see the chart object that was underneath it. So now you can. You can now see Asia underneath, you can see Africa underneath, you can see the Americas underneath because the sheets can now be transparent. So where is the transparency of the sheet? On the top sheet here, this one, if you right click in the area there and go to format, where is my format? There we go. You will see your marks, your format marking over here, font, alignment, shading. When you go to shading, under your worksheet, you now have a none option. When you go to pane, you now have a none option, and it really makes your chart have none in the background. So now I can take opacity on my color. I can make it somewhat opaque so that you can opaque so that you can see through it. And as long as the worksheet and pane are marked to none. If I mark this to black, you'll see there, worksheet is black. It has sort of this black background. Well, then if I put one on top of each other, you're not going to see underneath it. You can't see underneath it because the worksheet has a black background. So that is transparency. That can also be useful. This is a web analytics dashboard from the big book of dashboards. And I'll just show you, this is a line. I did this this is not floating. Everything here is tiled. I did a bar chart that's tiled next to a map that's tiled. But let me show you what would happen if I made the map over here floating. So let me go here and make this floating. And on the background of it, you'll see the background. I'm just going to make it white so you can kind of see what it looks like here. So you have this box, right, for the map. I'm not going to leave it that color, but just so you can kind of see what the map looks like, right? And so let me zoom in here. I'll zoom into the United States, and I got this United States map of my web visitors. And I'll even take the title off of here. So now I have this map. It's just the United States, and I want to take my map and I want to put it over by my bar. Well, now it's on top of the bar. Even the white area where there's no map is on top, and you really can't see through it. Now you can just come up here, change this to none, and you can see it's now right on top of the bar. The map can fit in any space I want. It's not going to overlay. You can still see through it. One downside of that, just keep in mind, if I move it over here and that see the rectangle right there? If the rectangle is over my bar, let's just go like right here. So it's a little bit over the bar. I can't hover over that bar anymore. So I can't get to the objects underneath it to select it or hover it because I'm still in my map object. Once I move to my left, then I get my hover and I can select the bar because I'm off the object. So just FYI, you still can't click through them, but at least you can see through them. So that's really helpful when you want to, move things around. For example, something like this, you might want your map like here. And now you can see through it. So that's sheet transparency. New to 2018.3. All right, the last one I wanted to show you is density marks and some fun things. Actually, I have two more to show you. Density marks is a new mark type that Tableau added. There's no magic to this whatsoever. It's just in your drop-down box where Ethan was clicking bar or line or shape or circle. Now you have one called density. So this is what a density map will look like. It's not a dot, it's a concentration. So these are all of the no parking signs in New York City. There's 231,000 no parking signs throughout New York City. You'll see that there's some hot spots over here. There's a hot spot there. There's even this street, lots of no parking signs on that street right there. So you can kind of see these areas. There's a blog post I did on zooming in because I thought it'd be really cool if I could get to this area and I can zoom in and now I can see the streets and kind of see the parking signs on each street. So that's kind of if you want to see that, I got a blog post on that. But the mark type here, all you have to do is go to the sheet. A lot of data points in here. And in your marks, right here in your marks card, drop down box, right under polygon, they added density. So right at the bottom of the list, new density mark, right there, you just click on density, just like you would click on circle. So if I go up here and click circle, this is what you would have seen. Probably should think about how many marks I have on this canvas here, but I'm plotting 230,000 marks, so it'll take a second. But those are dots for every street sign now, as opposed to the density that clusters them together and uses the density mark. So you hit the marks card, drop down, go to density. Also with the density marks, they gave you a whole bunch of new colors. So there's a whole bunch of new colors built into them, one called sunrise, sunset. They have these new diverging palettes that they've added, these new sequential palettes that they've added. They're all called density. So you'll see at the top, density, density, density. All of these are the density marks. You'll see multicolor. So it kind of looks, different. You've seen all kinds of density maps before, I'm sure. So to give you an idea, I took some NBA data, made shots. I kind of like the NBA. So I just downloaded some data real quick. This isn't any particular person or game. It's a whole bunch of mixed data. But those are the made shots. So that's where the shots are that they made. You can see the 3-point line up here. Kevin Durant hit a 3-point shot down here close to the hole. James Harden, of course, went to the basket. Here's the missed shots. Just changed the color. So that's a built-in density color. This is the density mark, density red. And over here on the made shots, I just did the color of sunrise, sunset. So they have new diverging and new sequential colors. Most of them are marked density, and you can just change the mark type. This same data in the old days would look like that. You can make a diverging palette in there, I guess, but now with the density mark, it can look like that. So really kind of cool. Last but not least, I wanted to show you navigation buttons. I guess I want to do this from a dashboard. So here's my city that never parks viz. I want to add a button on here that takes me to another sheet or another dashboard in another visualization. So to do this in the old days, we would have to create a hack for this. I'd have to create a new sheet. I can show you how we would do it. We'd come in here, we'd add some dummy text, or we'd add a dummy column. I might go up to my rows and just in quotes write next like that. NEXT in quotes. So now I have this thing called next, right? I have this text called next. I would click my marks card, maybe make it a custom shape, maybe pick a shape from here and make it the triangle button, something like that. I'd probably make my text size, real big so you could see it, but I'd create this this sort of next button. I guess it's just regular text. So I got to change my font here. So I do something like that, change the size of this and make this bigger, something like that to get my next button. Once I had my next button, then I would have to add this sheet, which is a new worksheet down here called navigation button. I have to add that sheet as a floating tile, I guess. So I'd go to my no parking viz, go to my navigation button sheet. I'd want to make it floating. I float my navigation button on here. Then I'd have to get rid of my text, hide the title, hide this, format it the same. And then once that's just to get the button on there. And now once it's on there, then I have to create a dashboard action. So I have to go to dashboard, create a dashboard action, say on my dashboard action, hey, I want to add a filter action. And when I click on this sheet called navigation button, I want to take it to another dashboard in here called web analytics. I want to do it when I click and I want to show all the values and I click OK and I do all those steps. And then in theory, when I click on this, it takes me to my web analytics dashboard. So I had to do all those steps to basically get a fake object. And then by the way, when I come back here, that object's already marked as clicked. So then I'd have to deselect it to unclick it to click it again if I want to go back. So it's really a bad hack. Really not a great way of doing it. All of that is now gone. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Whoops. So I'm going to right click this object and get rid of it. Watch how easy it is now. Under your objects over here, you have horizontal, vertical containers in your image. You have a new thing called button. Holy cow, what is that? So I take button as a floating, drag button up here, and hey, it just dragged a button up there. That's pretty cool. What does the button do? Well, the button lets me do two things. One, I can edit the button, which means I can pick an image. So here's my image. I can navigate, choose where I want to navigate to. So I can say, oh, I want this button to go to my web analytics dashboard. Navigate to web analytics. I can choose an image. Well, that's kind of cool. Let's go choose an image. I got something in my download folder called click here. So I'm going to pick that one. And then I have a tooltip that says click here. And I click OK. Now I have this custom new button that I used a custom image for. I can size it to whatever size I want. I can put it on my dashboard. And when I click it, did I set it up? Let's go set it up here. Navigate to. Well, that didn't work. Button. Navigate to. Our web analytics dashboard. Why is it not going to web analytics? Click OK. Oh, I'm sorry. Silly me. That works only in presentation mode. That was dumb. Sorry. Still silly mistake there. So yeah, it only works in presentation mode for your navigation so that when you're in design mode, you're not kicking yourself to the next dashboard all the time when you're trying to click on it. So you can come up here and move it and design it and whatever you want to do. So yeah, so that's it. The nice thing is that you can do custom images. So you can make your images in PowerPoint like Kevin showed at one of our meetings this year. You can go get images off of iStock, which is what I did for that image. That was just an image I just acquired from iStock. You can size them just by the size of the object. So you can auto size these buttons and really, really cool features there. And then when I'm in presentation mode, the click now navigates. If I go back, you'll notice it's not already pre-selected. So when I click it again, it goes again. So it's actually made for navigation as opposed to being a hack. So really cool stuff. all available now in 2018.3. The other thing, if you're in an environment and your server's not on 2018.3, no fear, because they've added backward compatibility now. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, if you create something with density marks and publish it up to your server and the server doesn't have density marks, they're not going to show. But that said, you don't have to worry about compatibility issues anymore with downloading and uploading to your server or Tableau public. There's even, I don't think you know this, we may have covered it in one of the last releases, but when you save now, you can actually export as a version. So you can, remember like 3 years ago, I built a conversion tool and showed you at the Tug how to convert your workbooks. You can just go export as a version and it'll go all the way back. It'll tell you, like right here, by the way, hey, these following functionalities aren't going to work. Density marks, interactive, background transparency, and the inability to set actions. Like it's telling, well, of course those aren't going to work. Those are all the new features in 2018.3 that I just showed you. But I can go up here and say, you know what? I don't want to save this as 2018.2. I want to go all the way back to 10.2. And 10.2 will tell you, hey, okay. And you export it. And now this workbook will be exported as your name plus 10.2. So if you weren't aware of that, just be aware that's a cool feature too, and helpful with the new features as they come out. All right. Any questions on 2018.3? Yeah. The button will work on server and Tableau public as far as I know. There were some set action problems that were out originally, like it wouldn't clear your set actions. I think they have those fixed as well, but I think all the features in 2018.3 work on server and Tableau public now. Yeah. Set actions are going to be the big one because you can do so much stuff with set actions. Check out Twitter and it'll show you all some of the new features that people are doing. Just lots of crazy stuff, especially the bursting capabilities to click on something and drill down. Like I helped the case studies class at UC, and they had a picture of the body, human body, and they had a sheet for the whole body. And then when you clicked on the head, it went to the head. And then when you click on the eye, it went to the eye and wanted to drill down through the human body. And it was such a pain to build the way that they were trying to build it with all of these actions. Now with set actions, it'll be easy. You click on it, goes to the next one. Click on it, goes to the next one. So the hierarchy will be a whole lot easier to control. So that's all I have. That's the new stuff. Thank you all very much. Thank you all that are online.